Here comes the biggest asshole raptor the whole world's ever seen.
Hey folks, and welcome back to the Salty Seaman Tales from the Fleet. This time I have a special guest star. We're going to attempt to cover summer 97, probably through fall of 97. But we'll probably be jumping all over the place here with memories and whatnot. My special guest here is Brian Roth. You might have heard mention on a few of these tales from the past. Buddy of mine was a radioman at the time. Had one of the more interesting naval careers I can remember in 20 years. That's how weird he was. And we tried to do this before full disclosure, but the recording was crap. So we finally got around to redoing it. So here we are. Brian, what is going on in life today?
I think the last time we did this, it was in my luxury apartment, and the expensive wood floors made everything echo. So it was not good.
No, it was my fault. I didn't have headphones on, so it was like double echoing through the onboard recorder
Onboard recorder.
on the laptop. Yeah, which is very echoey and annoying. Which apparently I might be today, from what you're telling me. So, but I am going through
Yeah.
the actual mic.
From what I hear, it sounds okay.
Okay. So yeah, man. Give me so start over again. Give me a little background, who you are, where you're from, and why you joined the Navy.
Okay. So my background is I am from New Jersey, one of the most densely populated states where nobody joins the Navy. I think there was like maybe 6 guys in total that I met in my entire naval career that were actually from New Jersey.
I meant a lot more than that, but okay.
Let me think. Yeah, no, I didn't. Uh, and
The
I
problem with
joined.
the problem with Jersey guys is you never know because people will just say New York area or whatever.
Well, we
And
have
they're
two
actually
football teams who do that. They
yeah.
play. They play. They play 10 minutes from my house, but they have New York on their helmet. So
Yes.
yeah, that's why I never give them a dime of my money. If they're not proud of my state, then no, no, they don't
Or,
get anything from me.
or that last WrestleMania that was in quote unquote New York.
Yeah, I didn't get to go to that because they priced me out. It's a sore spot. I haven't watched the product since. I'm not kidding. No, I hold grudges. I'm ridiculous like that. But yeah, I was 17 when I decided to join the Navy. I was a freshman in college. I had a semi scholarship, I guess, to a prestigious art school in Manhattan, and I was commuting in and out every day. And again, 17 years old, I wasn't ready for that, and I wanted to get not out of New Jersey because it's not a bad place to be, but I just wanted to travel. I wanted to get away and go see things. And I remember thinking to myself, right now, I think I can make it through boot camp, but in like 5, 6, 7 years, I might like have a bad knee or a bad back or something. So I just want to do it right now. So I went and joined, and I shipped out. I think I think I joined on a Friday and I shipped out on a Monday.
Yeah,
I think that's
that's one of those real fast ones. Yeah, I've had a few
right,
friends that did
right.
that.
Well, I mean, what happened with me was that, I mean, you saw where I grew up. I grew up in very, wealthy suburbs of New Jersey. My stepdad had a good job, and we lived in a nice area. I went to very good schools, but I was a year ahead of everybody, and I think that put me at a disadvantage. It's called a cumulative disadvantage, where you're in kindergarten and you don't learn the math yet, and you get to first grade and they're doing stuff ahead of your abilities and you have no context for it, and it compounds. It just keeps compounding and compounding, and over time you become a poor student. You don't care. No matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, you still get the same C grades, and you don't excel. um, I got into college because I could draw comic book characters and I could draw really well, but that wasn't really for me because, again, 17, commuting out of the city, it was awful. So I joined the Navy, but I got really high test scores on the ASVAB. Like I blew it out of the water, and they wanted me to be a nuclear engineer. And they were telling me it was like a year and a half of school, and I'm like, I'm done with school. I'm joining the Navy so that I don't ever have to go to school again unless I really want to. And I think that was when I dug in because by osmosis I got a good education and I was good at arguing. So um, I saw that the radio school was in San Diego, And I figured, after 4 months of boot camp, I would get sent to San Diego, and if I didn't like it, I could just, quit the Navy and just stay in San Diego. That was my line of thinking when I was a 17-year-old kid. So, um,
There's a lot of people who did that actually. Yeah, I had the same. They gave me the same gimmick. I think that was very popular in the mid '90s because it was like just the economy is so good and the military is drawing down, and it's just like, hey, how do we get attract people? And is anyone who even showed a flicker of ability to the nuclear program, they would say, hey, we'll give you like thousands of dollars. Not
right,
and I got the same thing. And then it was like, hey, you got to take another test when I got to boot camp, or I got to MEPS, and I was like, oh
right.
shit, that's probably like more. It's probably like advanced math I don't know how to do, and I'm not going to pass that fucking test.
Exactly, exactly. That was my thing that I was thinking about. I mean, if you put this in context, I know a lot of people that are looking to join the Navy listen to your show or watch your show on YouTube. And in 1995, I guess it was or early 96.
Yeah, same thing as
Yeah,
yeah, same time.
there was no way to just get information about, the do's and don'ts of how to join the Navy. I mean, you go to the library and learn about the Navy, it would tell you, the Navy's mission during peacetime is to ensure free trade. During wartime, it's to protect the homeland, and but nobody tells you, okay, when you go to MEPS, that's where you process into the military. If they tell you that you should be a nuclear engineer, think about the fact that it's a year and a half worth of schooling. If you're not really great at math and you fail out, you end up going what's called undesignated and treated like, not very well by the fleet. You don't have a job, so you just scrape paint and do all the odd jobs around. And, it's a 6 year enlistment. Like, look at the fine print. But I had an uncle and a cousin
Well,
who were
here's the
both in
thing.
the Navy.
I'll interrupt you real quick. Yeah,
Sure.
the thing with the nuke guys that fail out, most of them don't go straight undez unless they really fucked up disciplinary. If it's a academic failure, they'll usually is like this guy's too smart. They're going to like stick them somewhere. Like I knew a lot of ETs and back when they had DSs and FCs, they still have FCs. But yeah, I knew a lot of those guys that eventually came in, that initially came in under the nuke program and then just
Right.
switched off to the non-nuke version of what they did.
Right. Yeah. And I would not have, I don't think I would have lasted academically in the nuke program. I mean, I got through
And
radium
even if you
and
didn't, like, yeah, they said like, hey, go be an FC. Like, would you want to go do that?
right, right. And I got through radium and A school because we had like a small study group and we'd go to Denny's and study. But we couldn't take the classified material out of
Right.
the building. So that was a problem. So I had to study at the building a lot. And I wasn't good at studying, it just wasn't my thing. And I didn't realize that I had academic ability until I was, in college years and years later. But at the time, I think I was like ADD. I was all over the place. I just couldn't concentrate. I got through radium and A school, but that was a chore. That was a pain in the ass. And when I got to the fleet, I just like didn't care. I was not interested in the rate. I was not interested in anything like that because um, I figured I would go and learn by doing. That's what they kept telling us in school. Like, when you get to the fleet, you'll be in the Radio Shack, you'll be learning this stuff. Then you'll take your tests, and all the tests will be stuff that you already worked on in the Radio Shack, blah, blah, blah. Little did I know I was going to go to a ship with like 900 radiomen and never work in the Radio Shack and still make third class because they didn't care. So I don't know how I did that, but I think it was like 100% advancement or something.
Yeah, it was
But
ARB 3 was for a very long time during that period, 100%.
yeah, and that was yeah.
Before we get to that, actually, and I don't for one of the I don't remember your stories of boot camp, but
Right.
you are a character. You are a if anyone if the few stories I've told of the crazy things Roth does, if you might remember it. Yeah, I think some stories from you in boot camp would be interesting because yeah, like how
Right.
did someone like you handle such a weird situation like boot camp? Like I was just a
Right.
very sheltered, rural kid who just kind of got shocked to the system and learned to fucking deal with it.
Yeah.
And you, with your personality, I can imagine was a little different.
Well, I've always had a very strong personality. I grew up in New Jersey where, I think if you look to the house on your left, you look to the house on your right, if you're not Italian American, then both of your neighbors are. And they tend to be very aggressive in culture. And that just becomes part of um, growing up in New Jersey. There's a lot of aggression. There's a lot of, what are you looking at? and I grew up crazy. Like my parents did not really worry about where I was as long as I came home at night. You know, it's that cliche about growing up in the '80s. You got on your bicycle, you came home when the street lights went on, that kind of thing.
Yeah, same thing here. I
Right,
never heard.
right.
I was like, I was talking about this the other day. My friend says, "Yeah, you could ride on the highway as long as you wore a helmet." And I was like,
Yeah,
"Helmet?" My friends looked at me if I put a helmet. I was like, "What are you going to do? Some BMX tricks? You fucking
yeah,
pussy! Get the fuck out of
right,
here. We're riding bikes."
right. Yeah, I was I was very adventurous. I got hurt a lot, injured, stitches, stuff like that. But I was pretty aggressive, and I've always been a big talker. You know, I can talk. I don't shut up. I can be really annoying. I can be a pain in the ass, but I talk a lot. And when you go to boot camp, you get processed in. The first thing they tell you to do is shut up. Like you cannot speak, and that like made me a little bit nuts. But um, I remember the instructions that I got about joining from my cousin, who already had like probably 15 years in the Navy by then or something. I don't know, but he kind of told me about um, how they had a certain responsibility if you scored high on a test to put you in those high requirement rates like nuclear engineer or intelligence or radio. And when I turned down the nuclear engineering thing, they told me I had to take it and I had to do 6 years. And I'm like, no, I don't. I didn't sign anything yet. Um, but then I found Radio Man with San Diego, and I'm like, I'll take that one. That's 4 years, right? I'm like, can I get 3 years? And they're like, no, 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 4 years, 4 years. I'm like, all right. So I was basically negotiating at MAPS,
Which is
and
pretty
then
good for a six
yeah,
because your school is like a
right,
6 month. Yeah,
right,
like most,
yeah.
like the journalism school is also 6 months, but it requires a 5 year commitment.
Right. Yeah. So I got out to San Diego, but before that it was boot camp and I didn't have any more tricks up my sleeves. I didn't have any more good advice. Like, the one thing I recommend to people that are going to join the Navy, get online, listen to, Salty Seaman, listen to this show, listen to lots of other shows, look up stuff online, like, how to fold your clothes. Just familiarize yourself with stuff and you'll be a mile ahead of everybody. And I mean, I think
I'll
I
use
was
this. I'll use this to promote my how to tips to avoiding to the Navy video parts 1 and 2 on my channel.
Yes,
Go
yes,
ahead, Ryan.
yes, yes, but because we didn't have anything like that back then, there was no way to know anything. I mean, everything was like gossip, hearsay, like, you're waiting at the airport on the way to go to boot camp and people are saying, "Oh yeah, like this is true in boot camp and that's true. Oh, this is what happens, that what happens." And they're always all wrong. All of them are wrong because they don't know anything either. But um I remember processing through and getting there and I remembered something that was real weird, the immunizations they give you and they were like space guns from Star Trek. Did you have that, or did you have real needles?
We had the guns.
Yeah, we had
I
the
would.
space guns, right?
I think we came in about almost the same time. You just had a little longer boot camp or a little
Right,
longer
right.
e-school.
Well, my boot camp was longer too because they shut the government down. That was a whole other thing.
I got out.
Um,
See, that's what I got out. We graduated the week it happened, and they cut
yeah,
the tickets, which I also talked about on Tales in the Fleet, the day before they cut off funding. So
right,
my graduate week got out. Or the last ones to get out, and everyone else got stuck for a week.
right. Yeah, they got
My
stuck.
my she got she listens to it. Hi Amanda. Hi Mark. She got stuck on service week. She did 2 weeks of service week because of the shutdown, which had to fucking suck.
Well, I mean, I remember getting in there and getting my head shaved, and I didn't care. It didn't matter to me. I had blue hair. I dyed it blue just for fun. I had never done that before, but I was like, yeah, screw it. Um, I remember standing at these long tables and having to take off all your clothes down to buck naked and put everything in a box, and then they gave you new clothes and new sneakers. I remember that. What else? I remember getting in vans, getting driven around, ending up in like some temporary housing unit, and then they came in screaming at us. And I'm like, okay, I guess this is
The
what they do.
the Smurf motel.
Right, right, right. Smurf, because we had the blue navy sweatpants and sweatshirts and shoes. Yeah. Um, I remember right in the beginning, they started asking us all these questions. And one of the questions was who went to Catholic school. And my parents had sent me to Catholic school to torture me. My last 3 years of school were public school after I finally got kicked out of Catholic school for like the 50th time. Because I like to argue. So I raised my hand that I went to Catholic school, and they told me that I was going to be a recruit petty officer for Christians and Catholics or something. I was the chaplain guy or something. I
The
was the
chat
rule. Yeah,
the religious PO.
yeah, the religion. And I'm an atheist, and I've been an atheist since I was 8 years old. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And you don't get to argue back. You can say, "Hey, well, actually, I'm an atheist." Like, they'd be like, "Shut up, you're 17. You don't know what you are." But you went to Catholic school, so you're gonna. Basically, it was me and the Latino guys, usually Mexican American, and we would all go to the Catholic services on Sundays. So that was a thing. But yeah, I was a pain in the ass in boot camp because I've always been this kind of person that,
I can't. I
yeah,
can't imagine. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
No, I was a pain in the ass, but it's because I wanted to push my boundaries, and I knew at a young age that anything I feared, like anything anybody tried to use against me as fear, right? So they would use this thing called ASMO. It meant left back in boot camp. It's like getting left back a week. You have to do an extra week of boot camp. But I looked at it, yeah.
FYI, the other services call it recycling, and I think maybe
Okay,
Navy has
recycling,
switched
yeah.
it. Maybe the Navy switched
Right.
it, but yeah, ASMO stands for it's an acronym, which is like one of the first. I can't remember what it stands for anymore. Is like
Yeah.
assisted moving over.
Right,
Who
right,
fucking knows? But it means
right.
like yeah, you get held back.
Right. You get held back. And I remember thinking to myself, I didn't want to get held back. I didn't want to get ASMO. And they kept saying if you get in trouble a certain amount of times you get ASMO'd. Um, and I didn't want to get left back in training for an extra week, but I didn't really care about that. I cared about having to put a line through my boot camp number on my clothes. I didn't like that idea, and having to redo all my clothes with the stencils.
Well, the
Um,
ugly ass cross through. Yeah, all the
right, right,
ASMO guys had that. Like, you get the guy that'd been ASMO twice, and
right,
he would
right,
like
right.
like a list of stencils.
Yeah, and I also didn't want to have to pack up all my belongings and move them somewhere. That bothered me the most. I didn't want to have to empty out stuff. So I knew that I didn't want to get asthma. And I knew that my beard was so thick that I was just going to keep getting I could shave, walk out of the bathroom, go stand by my rack for inspection, and by the time the commander got all the way down to the end of the bunks where I was, my 5 o'clock shadow be growing in already. So I would get, a gig for, having not shaved that day when I had just shaved that day. So I started doing this thing where I would run over my face with my razor real hard, not to shave my face, but to put fresh nicks on my face, bleeding. So by the time they got down there, I'd had some nicks on my face where I was bleeding, actively bleeding, and they couldn't bust me on no shave because bleeding is okay, but you don't want to have a no shave. So I would nick up my face on purpose so that I wouldn't get busted because I did not want to get left back in training because I didn't want to have to re-stencil all my clothes.
Well,
So
see
yeah,
that was another thing. They were probably just looking to hit you on it because they
right,
could. Because
right,
I mean, they understand. Like some people, like even if they're clean shaven, they
right,
they'll have the appearance of still having stubble, and
right. Because
they're
yeah,
supposed to know how to judge the difference.
right. Because I have pale
Alexa
skin and black
off,
hair. Oh,
right?
yeah,
And yeah, we had tons of hair. Yeah, we had one guy who had like a permanent 5 o'clock shadow, but
right,
he don't
yeah,
shave because they my instructors at least looked at him closely. He's like, okay, you just have a shadow. But yeah, I could see where, if they didn't like you and if you were a smart ass, like, maybe you possibly were in boot camp, they were just looking for
right.
something to fuck with you out.
I wasn't exactly a smartass. I think that my reputation in boot camp was half earned and half me just being myself and not realizing I was trying to push anybody's buttons. So, for instance, ASMO was bad, but you had a choice of something called MTU, a motivational training unit, right?
I went twice. Yes, it
Right,
sucks.
right, right. So, the motivational training unit, just to describe it, you had to wake up earlier than everybody else to go to this motivational training unit. You had to,
You're already
yeah.
low on, you're already like in a fucking deficit on sleep and all at boot
Oh,
camp anyway.
very big deficit in sleep, and they do that on purpose in boot camp. But
Yes,
um,
it's completely purposeful.
yeah,
Completely
so
purposeful.
they send you there. They make you do calisthenics with the rifles. They make you do nonstop calisthenics, no breaks, no water.
The trunk twisters are fucking murder.
Yeah, it was awful. But I was 18 years old, 6'1" at the time. I grew an inch in boot camp, which was weird. Um, I also went up a shoe size from 12 to 13, which is really strange. I had to get new boots by the time I got out of boot camp. That was weird.
Yeah,
Um,
I stopped
but
growing at 16, so yeah, that's totally where you
Yeah,
went.
yeah. So, but I got in good shape in boot camp. I mean, all the marching and then the running and all that stuff. So that really wasn't a problem for me, especially the push-ups. I've always been top heavy. But they kept saying this MTU thing. So they kept trying to scare me with it. And my thing in my entire life has always been I don't let anybody have any kind of power over me like that. I don't like that. and I've always been very defiant. So what I did was I got one of those request chits where you request to like go see the doctor because it burns when you pee, or go make a phone call because you got a letter from home that said you had to call
A
because your
Red
grandfather was
Cross,
sick. Yeah,
yeah.
right, right. Okay, so um, I put in a request chit to go to MTU.
Of course you
I
did.
literally,
I
yeah, I
remember you
did.
telling me this
Right,
now. Yes, yes.
because I didn't like having anybody holding anything over my head. Like when I was in school, when I was in grammar school, they would hold summer school over my head, right? And I just made peace with the idea that I was going to go to summer school, and I would call up the high school that was 2 towns away and enroll myself in the summer school. I didn't care. I didn't want anybody to have anything over me. You know, I knew I didn't want to get left back in school because that was social suicide, but I also didn't want to be scared and having it hanging over my head that I was going to go to summer school. That's always been the way I thought. So I went and I put in a request and they denied the request. So like, why the hell do you want to go to that? And I said, oh, because I think it'd be good extra workout for me. And they were like, you want an extra workout? We'll give you an extra workout. I was like, okay. So they did the thing where they made everybody drop and do all the push-ups and the extra sit-ups, and they blamed me for it because I asked for an extra workout. But what they didn't understand was I hated everybody. I just didn't care. Like they're like,
Did
Roth,
you
this
did
is
you
because
have
of
any
you.
friends? Did you have anybody from boot camp that went with you to
I
school?
I did. I had a few friends, a few of them you knew. But
That went all the way from boot camp, A school, and back to the bridge.
yes, yes, yes. There were
Okay.
certain radiomen that you knew. I don't like naming names because I don't want to get sued. But yeah, there was a few that you knew. So
Well, give me some hints so I can see if I can remember. I mean, it says 20 years ago, but
oh, one was just called G. Yeah, I'm sure you knew him.
I don't.
Yeah, he was a
No, I
radioman.
don't. Oh,
But
gee.
yeah,
Oh,
G. Yeah. So
free ass. Plus, you do my laundry.
yeah, he was next. He was right next to me in the rack, and
A
like,
guy who had a
right.
lot of problems when he started, but got his
Yeah,
shit
yeah,
together and
yeah. He
got his
got it,
career together.
and he was very overweight when we started boot camp. And by the time he got
Really?
out, he looked
Because he
great.
was in
Yeah,
good shape. I remember him always being in good shape.
exactly. He was not on our first day. He was part of what they called the lunch bunch. These were guys that would have half lunch, had to
our,
go and do extra workouts.
our, our first MA was like that. He was a big Texas boy.
Right, right,
Bill. I
right.
remember
Yeah,
his name. He made chief.
yeah,
I found him a lot too long ago. But yeah, he was saying he was a big boy. I don't know. I
right,
was surprised he was in, but like they bought him. I remember they bought him like 100 different pairs of pants because they didn't know what he would
right,
end up like
right.
at the end.
Right. I remember when I made that request to go to that MTU, they thought I was nuts, and everybody else was like, "Oh, we got to do this extra workout because you wanted an extra workout, haha." And I was just like, "I don't care." I just didn't. I didn't like people. That's just my personality. I guess, abrasive.
A little
Um,
bit.
yeah, but I did have friends, people that liked me in boot camp. I don't know why they liked me, but they liked me. But I had a situation where, the division commander knew that I was a ball buster, and the next day he came and he busted me on something that didn't exist. I think he said I was sitting on a table during my watch or something, which I wasn't, and he sent me to MTU. And I was like, "Oh," he's like, "Well, you got what you wanted." I said, "Right, okay." And I went and I just did the workout and I came back and everyone's like, "Oh my God, what was it like? What was it like?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it was pretty bad, but whatever." And I got through it, and I knew it was only an hour long because I had to go muster with the rest of the division. So, there was a time limit on it. I knew it was coming. I knew there was a time limit. I knew I would get through it. And that's kind of how I tried to pace myself. I didn't like having anybody have any leverage or anything to hold over my head. I wanted a clean slate. I wanted a fair shake. I wanted a fair deal. I didn't want anybody, well, if you blah, 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 step out of line. And I didn't like the fact that things were, that there was anything that could be subjective, that there was anything that they could be, well, oh, they just don't like you. That's why this happened to you. And one of the reasons I joined the Navy was because I wanted things to be very structured and have rules. I don't like things to be subjective. I like things to be objective. And you break this rule, you pay the price. That was kind of how I thought about things because I've always been very good at figuring out what the rules were, where the boundaries were, and how to push people's buttons and drive them completely crazy just for amusement, but back off right before they could bust me with something. Because when you're in the Navy, you're always dealing with people that have some sort of rank that is completely objective. It's on their shoulder. You could see the chevrons there, and if you want to drive them nuts, that's fine, but don't give them any reason. Don't give them any reason to be able to bust you for something and get you, a demotion or restriction or any of those type of things.
say this to how you did that. Yeah, the thing is in the military, if you're a guy like that and you have a supervisor who really wants to fucking send you to mass, most of the time it's going to a lot of time, or not most of the time, but a lot of times it's going to happen because the other person's just going to be like, well, yeah, I guess I pushed, I got to take my licks because someone doesn't like me. But in
Right.
reality, if you're smart enough, like, okay, well, if you want to do this, I'll get my paperwork, you get your paperwork. And if
Right.
the captain also has something against me, we can take this all the way up. And there's always that threat of, if their case isn't strong and they know it, they're only going to push it through if they think the guy's too dumb to like try to take it to court martial or further.
Right.
And a
Right.
guy
If
like you,
you,
they knew like,
yeah.
okay, I can, I, but more than likely he's really going to fight it and really know how to do it, and it's not fucking worth it. So in your case, you were sent TAD 90% of your time on the ship. To move a little further, that you went to high school. I remember you telling me you got really into running back then,
Yeah. I got a
and
runner's
you just
high.
like you really love San Diego, correct?
Yeah. I love San Diego. Um, I got a runner's high just running on my own. I was just running around this track, and it looked like an old high school track on the base. And I remember I got a runner's high, and it made me very uncomfortable. It freaked me out. I was like, "What the hell's the matter with me?" I felt like I was floating. Like, I could have just kept running for miles, I think, but I didn't because I thought there was something wrong with me, and I walked back to the barracks. I'm like, "There's something wrong with me." They're like, What are you having a heart attack or something?" Like, "I don't know. I just feel like I'm floating." They're like, "That's a runner's high." And I was like, "Oh, wow." And
Y-
I
Yeah,
think
you've
I
been
only
drunk
hit
like
that.
once in your life at that point, right?
At that point, I had
The the,
had
the, the, the falling in the snow bank story.
right, right. I had a couple blackouts by then, a couple blackout
This
drinking
is why you didn't
sessions.
drink, because you didn't know how to drink. You were always terrible at it.
I didn't drink because I didn't like the fact that it cost a lot of money. I didn't like the fact that alcohol was expensive. I didn't like the fact that I was a civilian with a driver's license, and I didn't want to get pulled over, that kind of thing. So I was very anxious about drinking. I was very, very anxious about drinking. It made me anxious, and I had blacked out like on my birthday, I think, and before that. So I knew it probably wasn't the best for me because I think I have enough of that enzyme to just keep metabolizing the alcohol
Yeah,
until it just like,
as
yeah,
someone who has drank with you, I think a whole 3 times, and every time it was
yeah.
an adventure. I got to say, you're probably not a guy who should be drinking.
Yeah, I could metabolize a lot of alcohol
A
before.
lot. The
Yeah,
first time I drank with you, that how much vodka you took?
uh, like a pint glass full, I think,
It was
right off the
the
bat. And
for those of you who are listening who are veterans of Yokosuka,
yeah,
and I not only talked about it but shot a video when I went back to it a couple of years
we're at
ago.
Popeyes.
Popeyes,
Yeah, yeah,
yes.
yeah, we're at
Popeye
Popeyes.
Texan is very famous for his mixed drinks, which were, and I believe he kept it so cheap because he had some kind of deal with the Yakuza or some dude on base who was sneaking him shit. Whichever
Right,
way, he gave you like a full glass of fucking vodka and like he splashed it with orange juice for color. That was it.
right.
It
In
was, and it was
Japan,
$5, which
right.
was for Japan in the '90s was dead cheap.
I only really went out on Debuita Street or that haunch area out there off the base to drink when you dragged me out. Like you would guilt me and tell me I was wasting my life, and because I would just put on a pair of headphones and just walk around town all the time. I was just weird. I was just always walking somewhere by myself. I was
Well,
always
I didn't
walking
know you were.
around.
I didn't know how they. I was just more interested in like, dude, have some fun. Like, I knew it wasn't
I
your
never
personality
had
to go
fun.
out all the time, but I was
Yeah,
like
I
once
don't
in a while,
like
you should
fun.
come out and do something.
I've never
And then I
liked fun.
realized first time I saw you drunk is like, okay, getting drunk is not the good idea for this guy.
Yeah, this is not good for this guy. Yeah, so I remember A school as I had a couple drinking experiences in A school, which should have been illegal, but I think on the base it was still legal until right when I left. I think it was legal to get drunk on the base at
Wow.
18. I think it was.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Yokosuka was it was weird too because you came there after I did, but when I came
yeah.
there, the first month it was 18 to drink beer on
Then
base.
it was then it
Specific.
was
That was the
19
specific rule. You could buy beer at the you could buy beer at the exchange. You could drink at the on the club as
right
long as it was only beer.
at 18.
And then at 18, and then
Then you
at
can go off base at 19.
they flew me out to Singapore. On the way back, I was only out for like 2 weeks, and on the way back they said, "Oh, rule change in Yokosuka, you have to be 20 to drink." Period. And I was
Yeah, but
19 with
then
9 months to go, and I spent 9 months basically scared out of my fucking mind because I drank pretty much every day. I wasn't on duty, so
yeah, but then you
it
could
was like
drink.
9 months of like worrying every time I crossed the quarterdeck, someone was going to catch me, and
Wasn't
whether I
Japan
was drunk or
19?
not, if I had any alcohol in me.
Right,
No,
but wasn't
20.
Japan was 19, right?
No, Japan's 20.
Oh, Japan was 20, okay. So, yeah, I remember, San Diego, I did drink, but it was still legal on the base. That was back during the Clinton era when they started changing stuff, but it was 18th drink on bases if you were enlisted and you had the ID card, and I was at a boot camp by then, but, I remember it being ridiculous because after boot camp, we had what was called basic training, which is usually some synonymous with boot camp, like, in movies or popular culture, but it was a different thing. It was like basic military instruction. And it was kind of like a
I
holding,
didn't have that class. Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
it was like a holding place. It was like boot camp part 2 for people waiting to go to the technical A school. And
Oh, okay.
I think they were trying to see if people would get in trouble if they had weekend liberty, because we had weekend liberty at this basic military thing. Um, and I think they were trying to see if people get in trouble, get arrested, get drunk, crash cars, stuff like that, so that they could weed them out.
Yeah.
Um, because they
But
didn't
yeah,
want
it's
to
because
spend the
you're
money.
on.
Yeah.
So you were in you were on hold. Yeah. Okay. So
It
yeah,
was
I
kind
went
of
to
a
hold
hold.
and
Yeah.
yeah, I was in hold in Meridian, but it was like I worked like they had a horse stable. Like we didn't like I spent a month cleaning horse stables with a
Right.
really cool M1.
I spent a month with the Seabees building a retaining wall.
Yeah, and they were cool as
So,
shit. It was like
right.
your first time in the fleet. You see a first class, you're like, oh my god, they're like gods. And this dude was just
Yeah.
hey, just do your work, do whatever. Like I don't care if you smoke. I'm like, do you have a cigarette? He's like,
Right. That's one
yeah, man.
thing.
And the dude handed me like 4 cigarettes. He's like, bro, go
Right.
ahead. I don't give a shit.
That's something I didn't get into, because I started having to smoke just to get a break. Because the weird thing about the Navy is if you want a break and you're a smoker, they will give you a break, because I think that these old salts have this tremendous amount of empathy for people that really need a cigarette. However, if you're not a smoker and you just want a break, they'll tell you no. You don't get a break, because why
Yeah,
should you get a break?
I've
Right,
heard that complaint from
right.
non-smokers my entire career. Yeah.
So I found a box, an empty box of of cigarettes. That's what they're called. I found an empty box of cigarettes, and I put like 2 or 3 cigarettes that I had bummed off people in it, and I put it in my pocket, so I looked like a smoker. And then I would go out for smoke breaks and just stand there, and I was
I knew people. I knew
probably
a lot of people who did that too. Yeah.
right, right. So I would suck up a bunch of cigarettes, but I remember there was these people that had this really cool smelling cigarettes, and I didn't know if they were marijuana or not, because I was completely
Close.
naive to drugs. But yeah, they were clove cigarettes, and I started smoking those. And then I went to go buy a box of them, and I remember I had the box of cigarettes in my hand, and I was at the register about to buy them, and I thought to myself, if I do this, I'm going to be a smoker. And I remember leaving them right at the counter and just walking away. And to this day, I'm 42. I've never purchased a pack of cigarettes for myself, ever. I have bummed them off people. I have smoked a cigarette once in a while. When I first started doing stand up comedy about 10 years ago, people would offer me a cigarette after a really good set. And that's, by the way, that's to everybody who's listening, that's my job now. I'm a stand up comic. But I remember thinking to myself, this is too good. It was really, really good. And I remember as a kid, they'd make cartoons and things about people who would smoke after sex. And I would think like, this is a high. This is like, I got to stop this. I have to stop. And I've always put the brakes on things like that, like drinking and smoking, because I've never wanted to be a slave to those
Because
things.
smoking is so insidious because it's a very light high. It's just a little, that
Right.
feels good.
And it goes away. It goes away. If
Yeah,
you
it's
smoke a cigarette,
the
yeah,
the only time I really feel it is like if there's a long break on like back on the ship, it was like, it always felt great if there was any kind of thing where they told you couldn't, because then you
right,
suddenly
right,
wanted to
right,
do it really bad, which I
right,
always hated. Like, remember the Blue Ridge? It was anytime we did flight ops, which like no other ship ever does, cuts off
right,
smoking for flight ops. It was
right,
a weird Blue Ridge rule. But yeah, I had like fuel on boards and blah blah blah. But the thing, like for me, it was always like first thing in the morning, get dressed, grab a cup of coffee and a cigarette, and go out to the smoke deck. And like that was that great, first
Here's
nick, first caffeine in the morning, watching the sunrise. It was like
here's here
it felt great.
right.
Yeah.
Here's some advice to people. Okay, well, I don't recommend you do this, but here are some of the things I would pretend to do. Now, these are good. These are things I would pretend to do or be in order to get away with things. So, for instance, we've already gone over, I pretended to be a smoker so I could get breaks. Because if you pretend to be a smoker, you got a pack of cigarettes, and they see that you actually physically have cigarettes on you. It was like an old crushed box with 3 busted cigarettes in it, but I had it on me. And I said, "Yeah, I need a break. I got to go smoke." And you could literally get a break every 45 minutes, and somebody else would go assume whatever you were doing. You go pretend. I would just stand up there, pretend to smoke, and I would just stare off on into the ocean. So that was a nice break to have. I would pretend to be drunk in foreign ports so that people would not bother me, so that people would not ask me to buy things, pay for things. I would act completely insane, like so that they wouldn't try to scam me. And whether that was other people from our ship that were trying to
or
get,
the
yeah,
locals.
the locals,
You
people
love
trying to
fucking
get me
with
to
the
pay for things.
locals.
Oh, all the time. So I would pretend to be drunk, and I got very good at it, even though I was not a drinker. Um, Usually I would have like just 9 month, like I would just go sober for 9 months and not have a drink, and then I would go out with you and have all the drinks. That I'd pay for it the next day. But I was a very weird, sporadic drinker, and it was only if somebody dragged me out. I would pretend to be Jewish in order to get off on the Jewish holidays, and I knew all the Jewish holidays because I grew up in New Jersey.
And
And I
luckily, your
remember
last name is Roth.
my last name is Roth, so people assumed it. And here's the one thing that was hilarious: there was a certain senior chief from Pittsburgh who hated my guts, and he had tried to mess with me, and he got reprimanded
I know who you're
because,
talking about.
yeah, because we were speaking about these. We were talking about this, how if somebody who's senior tries to write you up and send you into non-judicial punishment or something, if it doesn't stick, they look stupid and they get in trouble.
Yeah, the
So
captain. Well, I mean, if
right,
the captain takes his words, like, "Oh, if you really think this is going to stick," and
right,
then
right,
you fuck the captain on that, guess what? The captain's going to do to that
yeah,
senior chief.
you're wasting the captain's time. It looks like you hold grudges. It looks like you're a poor leader. So,
Yeah,
and I could understand why people would hold
and you could
grudges
get the
against
captain
me.
in trouble because if he convicts you, and then you go to NJP or you go to court martial, and they say
Court
like this is
martial,
bullshit. You
right?
go to and they do actually say because the court martial is always if you take it to court martial and they still convict you,
Then
the
you go to jail.
punishment's going to
Yeah,
be worse. The
it's going to be
punishment's
jail.
worse.
Yeah,
Not
yeah,
necessarily jail, but it could be a lot more than what the captain can give you. But
right, right.
you're found not guilty, the captain's going to look bad,
Yeah,
and the captain's going to be pissed off, and he's going to look at that guy who made the charge and like, dude, what the fuck? You told me this was a fucking easy
right.
case.
Right, and they knew from my history that I would definitely push a court martial. I would get a jag, and I would have fought whatever it was, and I would have won, and then they would have looked really bad.
Yeah.
But I would pretend to be Jewish because the first time I got to Australia, I think it was right around the time of Rosh Hashanah, and I remember this chief, the senior chief, who had had a problem with me before, who was trying to, like, he was doing the whole like be super, like super all business with me, like super appropriate, like didn't want any issue with me because he probably got in trouble for messing with me.
Yeah.
Um,
So
so he
same
was always,
that same guy got in trouble for messing with a certain large gay friend of ours.
I think I'm not really
No.
sure, but
I heard it from Big F. It was
okay,
like,
okay,
yeah, he tried to put a package in, and
oh, okay, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and it basically it came back of like, dude, you mess with this guy one more time, you're fucking gone.
Right, right. Yeah. So, well, that senior chief comes up to me and he says, well, Petty Officer Roth, if you want to put in for the Jewish holiday, give me the chit, and chit is a request, and because it was right around Rosh Hashanah, and I was such an argumentative guy. I was right about to say, I'm not Jewish. What's the matter with you? But my brain works faster than my mouth. And I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I got a week off for Rosh Hashanah, and I'm not even Jewish. And I was in Australia. I was just wandering around Australia with a backpack full of like Dr. Pepper and red vines, and just wandering around Australia by myself for like a week. It was ridiculous. Um,
We should remind everyone you were 20 at the time for
yeah, I was
your
like
choice of
20. Yeah,
your
yeah,
choice of snacks.
right,
It's very
right. Yeah. I was out of my mind, but I
You
remember,
were always out of your mind. Oh,
yeah,
let's pull this back a little bit before we get
right,
into
right,
it. Start with this is the story I believe you told, and I have confirmed it with other people who worked in the Radio Shack. Is that they Radio A school in San Diego, back when it was in San Diego, has been moved to Great Lakes a couple of years after you left.
right.
Yeah, the instructors called their friends on the ship to warn them about you. Is this correct?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I remember when I got to the ship, um, they said, "Oh, Roth, yeah, yeah." They called ahead about you, and I was like, "Oh, I hope it was all good things." No, not good things, not good things. But I remember at first thinking, like, because I had this tremendous ego. I have this like this heroes complex where I think like I'm Luke Skywalker or Harry Potter. Somebody's going to come to me and be like, "Don't you know you're the chosen one? Everybody's talking about you. You're famous." I'd be like, "Oh yeah, right. That seems about right." So I think part of my ego was fed by that, and then there was part of me that was like, "Oh shit, they already know my name." Um, But then I realized that I was getting treated the same as, like, everybody else that came in with me. Like, not really treated the same, like, people would bust my balls, more than other people, but I wasn't really getting hazed. I was just getting put with, like, the whole group of guys that they didn't know what to do with because we were all the same rate, the same rank. They just didn't know what to do with us, so they just, made us do manual labor and, clean weapons and, that kind of thing. So I didn't really take it too personally, but in the beginning, I was a little bit spooked, but I was also a little bit, you know, I think it fed my ego a little bit too because I was like, oh, geez, they already know who I am. In A school, I remember A school being, it was weird for me because I had freedom. I don't think I liked the idea of the freedom, being able to go out. I think it would have been just better for me if I was just in the barracks and had to go to the building every day for class and come back and stand watch or something. I don't think having freedom was good for me because it made me feel weird, being able
Yeah,
to
'cause
go out.
especially coming out of
Yeah,
boot camp, because you're just like so like, oh,
right,
what do I do?
right.
What do I do? It's 4 o'clock. What do I do now? And they're like, I don't give a fuck. And you're like,
Yeah, you spend
it's
4
it, it's
months.
so it's so
Right.
new. It's so new, but so old at the same time because that 2 months is so fucking intense, and it feels
Right,
like it was
right,
like it feels like it's been the last year of your life when it's only been 2 months.
right, and I spent 4 months in boot camp, then I'm in that basic military thing where they let you go out on the weekend, which was weird for me, and I didn't like spending money, I was weird about that. I never knew where more money was gonna come from, and I was 17 when I decided to join the Navy. I didn't really have any experience being an adult, and at 4 o'clock when they're like, "Yeah, just go do whatever you want," I'm like, I was always worried about going anywhere and not being able to get back and missing muster. I never wanted to miss muster, and muster for those people, it's just basically, it's like homeroom in high school. Everybody lines up, they take a roll call, they wanna know that you're there to do work at whatever time, or just there to just sit around in some lounge somewhere and wait to get told to do something. Um, so I liked duty days. I liked stuff like that. I did get to go up to Los
But yeah,
Angeles for a weekend.
sorry,
Yeah.
1 second. Yeah, for the non-Navy guys, that would be formation for other military
Right, right,
services.
right. Formation. Yeah. So, and they would tell you missing muster was like being AWOL, basically, UA, unauthorized absence, and they bust you down a grade, they put you in jail, and they scare the hell out of you with that. But it's not an empty threat. You miss muster, you can go to jail. So, and I didn't want that to happen to me. And I figured, my whole idea was like, look, I know that I'm crazy because I knew I was. I knew I was, a nutcase, and that I tend to do crazy things sometimes because I was just a ball buster, but sometimes because I just couldn't help it. We could tell some stories about some things that came out of my mouth, and I still don't know
Yeah,
how they
yeah,
did.
we're
Uh,
getting there. We're getting there.
yeah, we'll work to that. But I would say some crazy things, and it was like it was like it wasn't even me speaking. It was that crazy. So I wanted to save. If I was ever going to get in trouble, I wanted to save it for something good, so they could say, "Well, the guy's got a spotless record, so let's go easy on him." That was kind of always my thinking. I didn't want to have like, "Oh, well, he was UA twice in A school, and they just gave him a slap on the wrist, and
Well, yeah,
then
well, you didn't even know, like,
yeah,
yeah, your A school stuff isn't
right,
shouldn't follow you. I mean, you
it
kind of got
does."
fucked
But
by,
yeah,
yeah, you only got fucked by getting a phone call, but your training
yeah,
record doesn't follow you.
they called ahead about me. They're like, "Yeah, this guy's a ball buster." I think it was probably the way it happened was they called ahead to the ship because somebody knew somebody, and they're like, "Yeah, you're getting like 18 radio men." And they're like, "Hey, any I should watch out for?" They're probably like, well, yeah, actually, this one guy's a real ball buster." So that's probably how it happened.
Yeah, because you
But
didn't sound like
yeah,
you were completely crazy in A school. It sounded like
right,
you
right.
kind of had a good time for the most
I
part.
I did. I was lifting a lot of weights. I was running a lot.
You met Joe then, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, I did. I met him. It
So if
wasn't
we're
really
using
that.
names that can't be traced to anybody, is like
Right,
Joe's
yeah,
pretty freaking
Joe.
common.
Joe. But Joe, I wasn't really friends with him that much in A school until the end, I think. And I think that's because he didn't want to invest in any friendships if he thought I was going to get kicked out, because that's kind of how,
Because you're Roth.
yeah, that's kind of the vibe I gave off. But the other weird thing was that I was 6'2" by then. I was in great shape. My uniform always looked great. I always had a great haircut. I looked like Joe Navy. So, like,
Well,
if you just saw
look at the
me,
pic. Yeah, look at the picture I'm showing here on the screenshot for this YouTube video. That's a good looking man right there. I mean, yeah, I'm pretty cute,
thanks.
but
Yeah,
look at this dude. This dude's
right.
fucking hot, and it's
Yeah.
like, I can say that is my best friend. And
I think I think that I just looked like a squared away Navy guy. I always did really well in the physical fitness and stuff like that. So
so let's get to you getting to the ship. Yeah, you've already got a bad reputation. What do they do with you? Do you go immediately to working for the Radio Shack or the IT room?
no, 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 no. just some background. I went on leave for a month after A school, and I ate up a bunch of leave that I didn't have, but they let you do that when you're about to go to your first command or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, I was
Because
20 I
yeah,
was 21 days in the hole.
right, right,
I didn't have leave till the end of the year, and I finally took it in
yeah,
Hong Kong for, like,
and
4 days because I was like I was in the hole for, like, the entire fucking year I
yeah,
was on
and
board.
the reason that they do that is because they spend so much time training you up to that point, um, that they want to
Yeah,
see if
yeah,
you're going
yeah.
to go nuts.
I
They,
mean,
they, yeah,
it makes sense
yeah.
too, yeah.
Yeah, they wanna see if you're just gonna flake out and be like, "I wanna stay home, I don't wanna go back," They wanna weed you out, but by the time I was done with that month of leave, that was, I think, August. Um, the month of August, it was summertime, all my friends were home from college and everything. I was like, "Yeah, I need to get the hell out of here because 'cause I'm not in college and I need to go somewhere." So, clearly I was still in the Navy, and it was weird because I didn't wanna be around, like, drinking parties and stuff and get busted. Um, I didn't wanna get underage alcohol when I'm 18 years old and home on leave. They'd love to make an example out of you for that and, like, send it back to your command, and then you show up at your command the first day and you're getting non-judicial punishment, you're getting busted down a pay grade that you don't even have yet. Um, yeah, so I did the month at home, and then I guess it's September. I think it was September of 1996, right? And I get to the Blue Ridge. Um, I'm in Japan for the first time. The Blue Ridge pulls in like the next day. I think I stayed in a hotel the night before on base or something, and then the next day the
TPU.
Blue Ridge pulls in. Yeah, yeah, TPU, whatever it is. And I remember walking up to the ship with like I think there was like 11 of us that were all radiomen, and I remember seeing um, the ship moored, meaning got tied to the pier, whatever. And the ship just looked gigantic. It literally looked like the Empire State Building on its side, floating in the water. To me,
But
anyway.
for
Yeah.
context, this would have been after we came back from Ulchi Focus Lens.
Right.
This
Right.
day, I would have been out with Brett and Mike Gastany getting
Right.
drunk at Seaside, and
But
that's the same day I got in a fight with Brett outside
well,
Seaside, FYI.
this was the day
Before
that
I knew
there was
you,
like,
obviously.
yeah, and I remember being on the base, and there had apparently been a scandal. The Sex on the Beach scandal had happened while the ship was
Uh,
out to sea.
no, it was before Ulchi. There was an exercise. We were supposed to do a engineering. It was called OPI, and we were in Guam to get replenishment, get ready, and we were supposed to go out to sea. And while we were in Guam, that the whole incident happens, and it's been talked about on.
Right. Right. It's been talked about, but that
It
was
was
yeah.
May of 90. It was my May of 96. Again, I have a ridiculous chronological
Yeah,
memory, but yeah,
whatever it was, that was
it
the
was huge. It was a huge
yeah,
scandal.
it was huge scandal, and it was like an internal Navy scandal. People outside the Navy wouldn't have cared, like, "Oh, what
A
happened?
few
How was this?" Yeah,
no, it made Stars and Stripes. It made a few.
it did, but
If it was
yeah,
today, it would have been a lot
s-
bigger.
I'm not even sure civilians would give a shit, but whatever. But I know that it was a big scandal, and that was a reputation that preceded the ship itself. And I remember seeing the person, like the main person who was in trouble for that scandal, a certain woman, and she was processing off
She
the
was an
ship.
RM.
I don't know, but she was processing off the ship,
Yeah.
and she had this big, like, shit-eating grin on her face, like, "You don't know what you're walking into. Bye, guys," and, like, she was walking off in civilian clothes.
Wow.
And yeah, so, like, that was the
Good old
first
spunk hole.
whatever she was, but that was the first.
I know her real name.
Yeah,
I don't think I used it when I talked about it, but yeah, well, I think I used a play on her name, which
right.
was spunk hole.
That was I guess whatever had happened to her had happened and been processed through, and now she was going home to whatever Midwestern place she
Right?
was
Yeah, no,
from.
she took it to court martial. She tried to fight the whole
Oh,
thing, but yeah.
okay, well, then she went back stateside, but either way, she was
Right.
leaving
She
the
did.
ship and, like, laughing at us, and I'm like, "Okay, great," and, we get on board the ship, and I remember I was assigned to 2 guys, and I didn't know if these 2 guys were, like, both pathological liars that were so delusional that they were affirming each other's pathological lies, or they were telling me the truth. And later on, it turned out to be like a combination of the two. These guys did have like some influence on board the ship and some friends and some access to like contraband and things you shouldn't have and stuff like that. And the rest of it was like a bunch of delusional pathological lying. So for instance, if this guy would tell me that he had access to a computer, which is a big deal, and a fan room where he could go to sleep that nobody knew about because he had a key to it or something insane, right? That turned out to be true. which on a ship like that was a really big deal.
Yeah, I
That
remember
made him a big
computer.
deal.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah. That
right,
was like the era where the
right,
people who were computer savvy were hooking up their personal computers to the ship's
right.
LAN,
Yes,
and the internet was free because no one
right.
knew any better back then.
Nobody knew anything. So, that guy did have access to that stuff. He also told me that his girlfriend was a Hollywood actress who lived in Hong Kong, and he would go sleep with her whenever we went to Hong Kong, which turned out not to be true. So that was a pathological lie. So these two guys, for whatever reason, they stuck me with them, probably because they thought I would like go nuts. And they were
Can I get some
constantly
hints on who these guys were? Because I don't know who you're
I
talking
don't
about.
even remember their names, man. I
Okay.
remember one of them. But they were both one was a third class petty officer, one was an E3. And he was telling me he was an E3 because he was offered E5, but he didn't want to take it. And he didn't take the E4 exam because he was on leave at home, like with his brother, who was a professional baseball player, and he was in the World Series or some crazy nonsense, which is not true. He was just a liar. Um,
Yeah,
but
also another thing.
right,
The
right, right.
bullshit.
The
I did
bullshit
a video.
artists.
I did a bullshit on the bullshit
Yeah,
artist. Yeah,
yeah,
I can't remember what I called
yeah.
it. The scammer, I think.
Right, right, right. And I'm a paranoid person. I think everybody's lying to me all the time. So my paranoia radar was always going off with these guys. But then he would say something like he could get us a room at the Navy Inn when everything was blocked out, and he could get us a case of beer, and then he did it. So like it was weird. Like he would tell these insane lies, but then he would back it up with other insane lies. It was like a 50-50. So
Yeah,
like
well, most of
yeah.
those guys, yeah, they had enough truth in what they did
Yes,
to
yes, yes. And that was new to
the
me.
other shit would seem more plausible.
Right, right. And that was new to me in the past. People that lied all the time, like, yeah, I
Yeah, yeah.
got
Well,
the
no, you're
yeah.
not used to carnies. I mean, who the fuck
Right.
is?
No, I didn't know. And like, when you're a kid in high school, so he's like, yeah, I got Super Nintendo. Dude, that doesn't come out for a year. Oh, I have it. Well, okay, bring it into school. Oh, I'm not allowed to take it out of the house though. My dad said I can't. Yeah, whatever. You're a liar. But
No, here's a fun, and I'll edit this out. Funny thing. You ever watch Angry Video Game Nerd on YouTube?
yeah, all the time.
Yeah, Mike. Mike Matai, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, he had He had a Super Nintendo and Super Mario World a year before everyone because his mom was a stewardess and
Right.
picked it up in Tokyo for him.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
Those people do exist, but most of them are
Right.
fucking liars. Yes,
My brother had a colored Game Boy a year early because I mailed it to him. So,
right.
but yeah, so I remember getting stuck with these two guys. They showed me around the ship. They showed me the berthing, and then they said, "You're never going to sleep here." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then a barge moored up next to the ship. It was like this beat up, old, insane barge, and we all had to go move on to that barge because work was
You were
being done.
yeah you were no, you're correct. You're correct. Yes,
Yeah.
this was not. So this was so you 96. Yeah, you missed Olchi. That was a shitty
Right.
fucking
Right.
Olchi, and then we came
Right.
back into the worst yard period we ever fucking had.
It was horrible, and I
It was
remember
fucking horrible, and I've also talked about this one before. Like,
right.
my what happened to my division.
Well,
Yeah, what happened to
they
the radio?
decided they decided that they were gonna make, midnight Liberty for everybody E3 and below. So, if I wanted to go out anywhere, it was midnight.
In Homeport Yoko? I don't remember that ever happening.
Yes, it was in Homeport, Yoko.
Was
It
that for
was
Radioman only?
I don't know,
It was not
but
definitely not for anything I never heard about it. So
it because when we went out to sea, it was midnight,
yeah,
and then I think when we got back, that was my first time being out in Japan overnight. So I think right after that scandal happened, the radio division got put on super lockdown.
might have, yeah.
So I was afraid to go to a movie at like 10:30 at night because it might not be over and I might not be able to get back to the ship at midnight. And I'd only been in Japan for like a month. I was afraid to go to a movie on the base.
Yeah,
So that was weird.
I was completely unaware if that was happening to Con
Right.
because yeah,
That's what
no,
happened in Kong.
even though remember the one of the officers involved was my officer. They didn't do shit to
Really?
Edmund though.
Yeah, I don't really know anything about it. I
You didn't
mean,
know he was gone.
no.
It was a little former prior enlisted PNC was an ensign. He was my division officer for my first 2 months on board, and then that happened.
Right, right. And I had nothing, I had no idea. I had no frame of reference for any of this stuff. I just knew there had been some scandals. Some people in my department were going to get in trouble. And, for any of you who want to go into the Navy, remember, It takes one person to screw something up for everybody. So that's usually how it happens. Like, oh, this one
So
guy decided to do
you're on
this.
the ship. You're on the ship. Yeah. So where do you end up doing like your first?
Um, I ended up,
Because this is leading into the story where I meet you and through who,
yeah,
you
now I'm
recall.
not really sure exactly how I met you. Really, that's kind of fuzzy, but I
From it was
remember.
through Jackie.
Okay, Ward. Yeah. Okay, so here's what happens.
I mentioned him by
The
full name, so that's fine.
Right, the radio department. Oh, you mean JT Walker? Isn't that his name now?
JT
Uh,
Walker, yeah.
yeah. So I remember getting to the ship
Shout out to Jackie
and
Ward.
right. So just for reference, on a regular ship back in the day, you would have a radio shack, which would be an area that was off limits because it was top secret, because we would get top secret communications in and out. And there would be like, I don't know, would a regular medium sized ship would have like what, 8 radiomen? And there'd be like 2 on at a time in the Radio
Yeah,
Shack standing watch.
8 to 12 back then. Yeah.
8 to 12 radiomen, and like one of them was a chief, one of them was a first
And
class, you know.
the computer side was separate back then. It was same
Yeah,
department, but they were
right, right.
DSs. The DSs
Okay,
did all
but
the computer shit.
for um, just radio, and the way I explain it to people now, back in the day, computers were computers, and your TV and stereo and like home entertainment system was home entertainment. Nowadays, they're like you can broadcast your Plex onto your big screen TV, and your Blu-ray player has a drive in your computer. You know, all that stuff. They're like merging now. But back then, radio and DS was separate. So basically,
Well,
radio and computers were separate.
yeah, let's just speed it up here. Like, get to
Yeah.
where how you get to rehab.
Okay, so rehab is not alcohol and drug rehab. It's not physical fitness rehab. Rehab was rehabilitating spaces on board the ship. So you walk into a space on a ship, or what's called a compartment, and it's got, floors, it's got walls that have to be painted, floors that have to be replaced. It's got bulkheads, it's got toilets, it's got everything.
Bulkhead is a
And
wall.
right, right. Okay, so I get to the ship and there's all these radium and they have no idea what to do with them. And the ship is undergoing one of the biggest like overhauls, like rehabilitation. Like if you renovate your house, like if you were to just completely renovate your entire house all at once and live in it and have, like you lived in a shed next to it, basically. That's that's kind of how I would explain it. And we lived on this terribly old birthing barge from like 1922 or something. It was ridiculous. It was like World War One era birthing barge.
Come on.
Yeah.
That was at least World War II.
Oh, okay, at least World War II. So, um, we're rehabbing this ship, and I get sent to what's called the rehab division. I don't think it was anything personal, really. It was just they had so many bodies, and I didn't know how to do my job at all, and they didn't want to start training me. So I got sent to this rehab division, and the thing was, I was this new, fresh guy straight out of school, like a boot camp. When you join the Navy, you get a job unless you get no job, which is something you've covered. So I had a job as a radio man. I was supposed to operate radios. I get to a ship that has like 110 radio men, which is about 12 times more than you need to operate the radios in a ship. The ship is in its like biggest renovation in 30 years, and I'm a body. So I get to this department called rehab where you rehabilitate parts of the ship. And I realize that I'm like just this slick sleeve, no rank, young. I guess I was 18 by this time, kid. Um, Nothing against me. They just had to put me somewhere. And even the people that had gotten like advanced to E3 because they were a Webelow and Cub Scouts or whatever the hell, like even those guys got sent to like different places on the ship. They weren't working in radio. So even the guys that turned out to look like the favorites already, they were all getting put in these weird places. So I didn't take it personally. But that was something because I was a radioman. What I realized very quickly in this rehab division I had been sent to, it was like the island of misfit toys. These were people that like had just gotten out of like restriction or captain's mast or um, were universally hated by their departments or whatever, just to get them out of the department. Eventually, that would be me, but at the time, it was nothing personal. I just got sent to this rehab. I was going to do hard manual labor. It wasn't a punishment. It was just we have nowhere to put these guys. But I was with a band of merry misfits. I mean, they were completely crazy. These people. So it was nothing personal. They sent me to go do this manual labor, this hard manual labor, and they put me with a bunch of lunatics. So it's kind of like, some kid who gets put in jail for jaywalking and he comes out a career criminal because he was with complete, murderers and rapists and psychopaths. I learned how to be more of, um, I learned how to get away with things on board the ship from all these degenerates that I was working with, basically. And
Shout out to Jackie Ward.
right, right. So a lot of times in the Navy, if you're doing busy work, you're stripping and waxing decks, like scrubbing wax off the floor, basically, and then putting new wax on. It's busy work. This
It needs to
busy
be
work
done, but
was
it's like not important
right,
compared
right.
to rehab where you're like really ripping shit out of the fucking
Yeah,
wall.
you're putting in brand new decks, and I don't know how many months I spent there. I guess it was until we went
It would
out.
have been till the beginning of this. We did the
Right,
first underway late November, and then we went to Hong Kong in December. So it would have been
we went to
September
Hong Kong.
through
Okay,
we
there you
went through
go.
early September through late November was rehab.
Okay, so we went to Hong Kong, right? Is that what we did in December?
yeah, but go back to like where we first met, and then it was
Did we first
I'll
meet?
set this.
Did we
Yeah,
first meet in
you came to
Fox?
the smoke. I was smoking,
Oh, you were
and
smoking. Okay.
Jackie and MS3, first name Ray. He was an Italian guy. I can't remember his last name. You knew who I'm talking about, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like, hey, what's up, Jackie? I was like, hey, what's up, Ray? And I was like, oh, hey, meet a new guy. It's fucking Mr. Roth. He's fucking crazy. He do anything he said. I
Yeah.
fucking loved it. Like
Yeah.
Jackie loved you, and like if you got
Right.
the seal of approval from Jackie to me, who was my hero at the time, like you were fucking cool. So I was like, all right,
Well,
this is the cool kid.
the thing about him was that he was like a no BS kind of guy, and I just did whatever he said. Because like the guy who was in charge of the division told me, okay, you stick with these two guys and you do whatever they say. And I did whatever they said. I would lift up heavy stuff. I would move stuff around. I was really good at picking up heavy stuff. I would go run around the ship, go and getting parts and stuff like that. And I could talk to people, so I could be like, "Yeah, so and so sent me here to get this," and they'd be like, "Oh, how do I know?" And I just talk to them, and they just give it to me. Like when they wanted a can of coffee to make coffee in the morning and stuff like, I just would go procure things. I was good at that. I was a social person. I was abrasive, but I was social, and I wasn't stupid. So I think when I first got there, like, "Oh, you just when did you get here?" I'm like, "Oh, last week." And they're like, "Oh, you got to go get some batteries for a sound powered phone." And I'm like, the phone is powered by sound. Why would it have batteries? They're like, oh, and that like, what do they call that? Like a goose chase, I guess.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
wild goose chase,
right.
typical hazing on the ship. Yeah, very
It was
light
hazing.
hazing, we
Yeah.
should say.
Well, it wasn't really hazing. It was just making you go do dumb stuff. Like they tried to make me empty all the hot water, um, on the mess deck. They're like, yeah, just empty all that hot water. I'm like, this is hooked up to a water line. It's just going to keep pouring forever. And they're
Right.
like, oh, and yeah,
It's partially to teach you, like,
don't
what
do dumb
things
stuff. Yeah.
are, and plus also
Yeah.
to, yeah, basically to fuck with you. Yeah.
Right, but I never fell for any of them, and I think they liked me because of that. And then one day I was talking. I was probably talking too much. I was probably talking their ear off about like Stone Cold Steve Austin or something stupid. And
Well, if
they
well,
told me,
Jackie and Ray, they would have
yeah,
been right with you.
right, yeah. But um, he told me to go get him sodas, right? And he didn't give me any money, so I just left and got him a soda, and I brought it back, and he realized that he had told me to go do that, and that was an illegal order, and that I had spent my own money. And he was like, and that because like it seems like something really stupid,
Yeah,
but
it was just like Jackie didn't
yeah,
realize till after it happened. He was like, "Oh shit, I shouldn't
right,
have done that."
yeah, and then like I think then he started kind of treat me with like I'm not. I don't have any situational authority. I haven't been there a very long time. Like I'm still a nobody, nothing boot camp, but I'm cool. So he liked me, and I never really gave him any reason not to like me. I could take a joke, I could take a ball busting. I would bust balls right back, but I wouldn't say anything that could get me in trouble if they wrote it down on a piece of paper out of context to look really bad. Um, which is something that happens in the Navy all the time. So, like when you're doing your mom jokes, and then somebody does a your mom joke, and then you say something back, and they have rank over you, they just write that down out of context on a chit and send you to mass. Um, but yeah, he liked me a lot. and they invited me because they had houses like off base. They invited me to go there to drink, and I was like,
Jackie had a
"Nah."
house, Ray
Yeah,
didn't.
yeah, and I was like, "Nah, not interested." That wasn't something I wanted to do because I never wanted to put myself in a position to
That
get
was not your
busted.
scene, bro. That was not
Right,
your scene.
right. That was not my scene. I had to be back by midnight anyway. But
You could not have
yeah,
you could have not have hung with those boys. You would have been like,
no,
I gotta go.
no, I would have died of alcohol poisoning. So yeah, that would have been
Well,
really
if you
bad.
didn't just get whatever bullshit they were doing, you're like, okay, yeah, I gotta go.
Right. Yeah, that would have been very, very bad. But they were crazy. But
Yeah,
um,
they were the they called themselves the Four Horsemen, and they acted like
yeah,
it. Jackie, I went with Jackie on missions, going around breaking shit around Yoko. They were fucking nuts.
yeah, that's just dumb behavior.
It's just completely dumb behavior. Like I told the story, and like, we had Never Ready with us, and hey Roberto, he listens. And we told the story, so it's fine.
Yeah,
But yeah, Jackie just said, like, we were walking through just breaking shit, and Jackie just says there was like some Japanese dude passed out on a park bench with us, those early cell phones sitting on the bench next to him. It's like, yeah, go break that dude's phone. And, Navarrete just like, yes, sir. 'Cause Jackie was his
yeah,
god. Just
yeah,
went over and just stepped on it, broke it, right? And I was like, both of us looked at him like, oh shit, he did it. Like, okay, we
yeah.
need to move faster.
That's that's the same situation when I brought the sodas. That's what happened. It was like the
Yeah.
same. Yeah, it was like, oh yeah, I
I
gotta
think you were going to
remember.
do it.
Yeah, yeah. The whole I didn't think you were gonna actually do that. Well, hey, you told me to. So that was. I liked playing that game of being very literal. Like,
Yeah,
somebody was like,
yeah,
yeah.
we can get to your cranking time, and I think
Oh, that was
I think
great.
I don't know if I told the story of you in the bathroom, but tell
Oh,
it
with the
again
fife.
because from your version, yes, the thief.
Okay, so we're fast forwarding quite a bit, but
So
um,
going into the same thing, you went basically straight from rehab to mess cranking FSA.
no, 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 no. I went to Fox Division. I went to
No,
the
there was no Fox after because the rehab we went straight to deployment.
yeah.
We did Hong Kong, we did
Okay.
holiday break, and then we went deployment. So
No, no,
you
no.
went
Okay, so I was in what was called Com CR at that point.
okay.
And something weird had happened. A lot of guys got sent cranking, but my last name is Roth, so it was R. So I didn't get sent cranking with the first group. It was all the guys that had names earlier on in the alphabet. And there was like 30 of us that were eligible to go. But the reason why a lot of the guys in our division liked us is because you could go like 3 times before you made E4. And those guys that had gotten there like 6 months before, a year before, didn't have to go because we were all there because each division only has to give so many bodies. So they liked our presence there because we were doing the stuff that they didn't want to do, and they got to go work in their rate, which was nice. But that created a glut where those guys basically got like grandfathered into like being the junior guys on the watch departments and working in the rate, and we never got a chance to. So we got put in what was called Com CR,
Yeah, it was
which
just
yeah,
it was a bad it was just a
it
bad
was
timing for you. Yeah,
yeah, it was the maintenance division of our division.
who was in charge of
And
you?
two first classes, one of whom was a complete sociopath, the other who was like the most laid back Joe Navy guy, and they were like best friends. Um,
I know the Joe Navy guy. I don't know the other one.
yeah, yeah.
I know
So,
exactly who you're talking about. I was like, well, senior, I only got 7 things down and blah blah blah. But yeah,
uh,
sure, we'll go do that. You're talking about
yeah,
that guy, right?
yeah. I think I'm talking about him, but
I fucking love that guy. I don't even remember
well,
his name, but
there was I can
well,
call one of
senior,
them.
he was the guy who was like, well, senior.
No, 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 not that. There was
Oh,
one
not
guy
that guy.
named.
Okay,
There's a. They both started with a
I can
B.
bleep it if you
Yeah,
want to.
yeah. No, no. They both started with a B. They were both African American guys. They were
Okay,
both.
different guy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they were both tough as nails. One of them was completely nuts. The other one was completely squared away, and they were best friends. And they were roll dogs and went out and drank together. And they were really cool.
Oh, yeah,
But
oh, I know who you're talking. Yeah,
okay,
they were
yeah,
they were the buddy cop team. There was like the squared
basically,
away.
yeah, the
Yeah, it
good,
was
good, yeah,
fucking Friday. It
the
was
good,
Friday. Yeah,
the good cop,
Dragnet.
bad cop. Yeah,
Yeah.
but they were both actually really cool, and they handled everything like in our little division of the division. I guess it was like a division of the department or whatever it was. The CR, it was comm maintenance, right? And what we had to do was we had to make sure that everything was maintained, underway, import, whatever it was. So like you're dealing with um, you're dealing with everything from the satellite towers, the radiator towers, the antennas. We had to chip them and paint them, and we had to make sure all the cabling was always secured, like long runs of cable. We had to fish cable all over the ship, bundles of fiber optic cable that we were running outside the bulkheads. Like on a ship, like in a house, you have all your electricity in the walls, right? On a ship, you have it outside the walls, like bolted to the side of the bulkhead because the bulkhead is metal. So we had to run all these giant bundles of cable, and we had to just maintain everything, computer and radio wise on board the ship. And that was a ton of busy work that really didn't even need to be done because everything had been done right the first time. But we would just go do it again just to waste time and have something to do underway. But I did not get sent mess cranking the first time I went down to that division, basically. And then when we got back, then I went to Fox division when we came back. Correct?
No,
Is that what happened?
you're so no. You went. We had an deployment, which you were on. You were working in the mess. You were working in salad prep. Oh no, you were working in S5 first. Then you went to salad prep. That's where I really got to know you because I was
Right.
working in
Okay.
the deep sink
The veg prep. That's where I ended up. The veg prep. But well, okay.
before
So
the veg prep is
right.
the
No.
funnier part.
Right. Yeah. Before the veg prep, I got sent because I was a radioman. I think I had made E3 by then. I don't know, but I was going cranking on like the second cranking, and cranking is basically in the Navy. Everybody has to do kitchen duty unless you're a medic, basically, unless you're a hospital corpsman, because they don't want any diseases mixing in with the food, I guess.
No,
So,
that was a Blue Ridge thing. Yeah, on
oh,
other
was it?
ships,
I don't know.
foreman
I
duty.
don't.
Yeah,
I
Blue
don't know,
Ridge had a
but
lot of dude. Blue Ridge had a lot of real weird rules. Just
weird rules,
FYI.
yeah. But everybody has to do a certain amount of kitchen duty. There's no way to get out of it. So I didn't go on the first evolution of it. I went on the second or the third or whatever it was, but I went late. And I guess we got underway. What was that, like January, February? We got underway to do like the big long cruise.
Beginning of January. Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's when I went. And
I was already in S2. I was working for MS2 Downs at that point. Like I eventually, it was like right before I went to Deep Sink.
mhm. Okay, so I ended up in the officers' wardroom. Um, They didn't want me in the wardroom because I had acne and I would shave every day and I would shave over the acne and my face would be bleeding. That was a problem for me because I had cystic acne. My beard hair would like get ingrown and start bleeding. So I looked like a disaster until I learned how to actually shave correctly. Um, so it was like right at that moment, they're like, yeah, we're not going to put you in the wardroom. And I didn't want to be a waiter for officers anyway. So they put me in. They put me in the scullery for the officers. Basically, it's like where all the dishes get washed in a giant. I basically was like the dishwasher, right? And that's where I met Blinky, who we will refer to as Blinky, which is very close to his real name. And I remember I was taking over for him, and I asked him why, and he said because he punched a second class mess cook in the face for saying something about his mother or something. I don't remember what that was about, but
Yeah,
he was
lost
completely
in time, man.
right. He was completely crazy. But so I get put in the sink, and there was this first class petty officer who we're going to call Scarface because he had a big scar on his face,
Say the
and
second class.
he,
MS2.
he oh, okay, he was a second class. Okay, so he was second class. He had a big scar on his face. So MS2 Scarface, this guy was like had like really he had like nerves. Okay, this guy was like really high strung, and he was Filipino. Um, and I had no problem with Filipino. I had a lot of Filipino friends. They were all cool with me. And when I first got there, some of the Filipino guys that I knew were like, "Oh yeah, this guy's cool." And like, if you got the endorsement from the Filipino community on board these ships, and this is not a racist thing at all. This is just how it was.
It
If you got
still
the
is.
endorsement, yeah, if you got the endorsement for these guys, you were in. You were cool. Like you were never like part of their group, but you were like adjacent and you were accepted. And
Yeah,
um,
I was in the same boat. I never had a
right,
problem.
right,
Like
and
everyone knew I was cool, and like yeah,
yeah,
we got along
and
fine.
they would take care of you too. Um, so I got taken care of in a way, but this Scarface guy hated my guts. I don't have any idea why. He just hated my guts from the minute I met him, he hated my guts. And he was like super sarcastic and he spoke English like perfect English. Um, there was no language barrier. He just hated me. And working for him was awful. And I remember I was up in the wardroom, so that was supposed to be like a big deal, but I was just washing dishes in the wardroom. And this guy used to bust my chops nonstop, like nonstop. And I remember thinking to myself, well, like, um, two could play this game. Like, if he's gonna bust my chops, I'm gonna get on his nerves. Little did I know he had like high blood pressure and like issues. Um, he was like he was clearly high strung. So
Violent issues.
yeah, he was
Hence the
violent. Yeah,
scar on his face. That didn't come
yeah.
from a complete accident. That was him and some
No, no,
dude in
no.
the barrio got in a fucking
Yeah,
fight.
yeah. That was clearly like a dueling wound or whatever it's called, a dueling scar. But the guy, um, it was me and remember that Deck Seaman Honeycomb, that guy? The guy's like, "You're a radio man. Can you fix my radio?" Remember that guy?
Yeah, I remember Honeycomb.
Yeah, I call him Honeycomb. He was like the dumbest person on earth, but he would actually just do whatever the second class said. Yeah, so he was just like the second class like little sprint guy who would just do anything. He didn't care. He just did anything. So he took
Nice
no
guy.
breaks. Yeah, nice guy. Took no breaks. Didn't eat. Like he weighed like 100 pounds. He was a disaster.
Yeah.
He was a mess. But anyway,
He tried. Yeah, he tried, man.
he tried because he was one of those people that wanted to do the right thing. He was just too
But
dumb.
he also knew he was stupid, which is always
Yeah.
good. If you
He
don't
knew
know
he
you're
was dumb.
stupid,
Yeah.
he's
No,
like,
he
I'm
was
gonna
a
do.
dumb guy.
Just give me something I can do to my ability, and I'll do what you need me to do. He
Yeah,
was a
he
cool
tried.
guy. Just
Not a bad person, but the second class, like, we just bust my chops to the point. And the story that you're looking for is, it was at the point where I wanted to
well, there's two stories, but first one, yes.
Yeah, I wanted to just ruin this guy's life at this point. I was so sick of him. I hated his guts. So, for instance, one day, we were moored in Yokosuka at a pier, and I was working, and I shouldn't have been working. There was no reason for me to be working, and I should have had like some liberty because they were giving people liberty at this point. I think it's when we got back from Hong Kong and we were going. I don't know what it was, but um, I said, I need to go use the head, and like just even getting a bathroom break was
This is like in
yeah,
December, yeah.
yeah, it was like pulling teeth with this guy getting a bathroom break. It was awful. And the heads that we would use were like the officers' heads, but you could use them like at certain times. They were taped off to be cleaned. You could go use them because officers weren't using them. God forbid you ever use the bathroom an officer used. It was like, no blacks allowed kind of thing. But and I don't mean that literally. I mean that figuratively. Officers
At one point, it was figuratively.
Yeah. Officers and enlisted do not use the same toilets. God forbid. So I said to him, I said, yeah, listen, I need to go use the head. And he's like, oh, you're just trying to skate out of duty. Meaning like you're just trying to like go take a fake smoke break kind of thing. And I was like, no, I really need to go use the head. He's like, get back to work. So I got back to work. Half an hour later, I come back. I'm like, listen, I really need to go. Should I just go in the sink? And he's like, no, don't go in the sink. I'm like, where should I go? He's like, I don't care. Go on the fife. Get out of my hair. So basically that would be like saying,
hold on.
yeah,
Hold on a
yeah.
second. You gotta say it correctly.
No, I'm not
I
doing
don't
that.
give a fuck, Roth.
Yeah.
Use the fucking fife. Go
Yeah,
to the fucking fife.
Yeah, he didn't care. And basically he was being sarcastic. It would be like if you said, I need to go to the bathroom at school and the bathroom was closed. You're like, where do I go? Like, I don't care, go home. And like you actually went home. I actually walked off the ship, walked all the way down the base to the USS Fife, requested permission to come on board, and found the head and used the head, and then left and walked back. And it took me like 2 hours.
2 hours.
Yeah.
I heard. I heard the story at the time. Trust me.
Yeah, so you can go ahead and fill in the rest. You
That's all I know at the time, other than what
Yeah.
you told me. I just remember you coming back like, what the like he went, what the fuck? Where have you been? He's like, you told me to go to the Fife. I went to the Fife. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you, Roth?
Yeah, because he wanted to write me up for being UA.
But it was like one of those situations where I think the chief just went like, just go back to work, you idiots.
Yeah, because there was a third class there. He's like, yeah, you really did tell him to go to the Fife, though. And he was like, oh, jeez. And the chief's like, yeah, just get back to work, assholes. So
yeah, pretty much.
But
it's like, I don't have time for your pity any bullshit.
I didn't tell you that story. That story went all over the mess decks and came down to the enlisted.
No, I was working on the S2 mess decks at the time, and like we heard, like, hey, that crazy guy Roth went and took a piss on the Fife because
blah
blah blah. And I was like, oh, I know that dude. Yeah, Jackie introduced me to him. He's fucking nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm friends with that guy. I'm not sure though. He's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah. I really didn't get to talk to you till later. Like you get moved down to S2 and veg prep, working for
right.
Lob Singer, our favorite
Yeah.
guy.
So what finally happened was
Yeah, go ahead.
I remember I remember they were telling me that I had to like paint something. I forget what it was. I had to paint something one day. I had to paint the pipe purple. That's what it was. It was like the fuel oil pipes or whatever it was. I had to paint them purple. Um,
JP5.
yeah, JP5, whatever it was. And like I was supposed to be like painting these pipes or something, and I was trying to paint them, and I got paint all over myself. But then I couldn't wear that uniform to like work in anymore. It was destroyed or whatever. I should have had coveralls, but they never gave us coveralls and like that whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
They did the same
so
thing to us. I happen to have a pair, but yeah,
yeah,
like
I
same thing.
think
Mine got ruined by grease from like. Remember we had to like
yeah. Well, comp
move like
department.
illegally dump grease off the fucking side of the boat, and like they would have us
Yeah,
carrying these giant pots, and like they would just get
right,
all over your
right,
fucking coveralls. Yeah.
right. But I didn't have coveralls. I just had like that gas station jacket and like my boot camp dungarees. And I think comp department sent a bill to S5 to replace my uniform because I didn't have a working uniform. And they just gave me this voucher, and I went to the ship store that actually had stuff in my size apparently.
Yeah.
So um, that all worked out, and then I got removed from what the hell did I think that's the reason I got removed out of S5, I think.
No, no, it was a lot bigger than that. I
Oh, what did I
believe
do?
Scarface came after you with a knife.
Oh, no, it wasn't a knife, it was a meat cleaver.
Point
But
being,
right, but I didn't get thrown out for that. I got
no,
thrown out of the
dude, that's what
scullery. Yeah.
dude. Senior chief came up and straight up said, tried to kill this dude, so we had to move him. Like that
Yeah,
is like
yeah.
that's from serious mouth.
No, he tried to kill me with a cleaver, a meat cleaver. Um, but
If
what
you
had
guys want
happened,
to know like what an asshole Roth could be, here you go.
no, here's the thing that happened. There was a boiling deep sink, right?
Yeah,
And I had these 2 giant gloves on. You know, like those gloves that go, like, up above
dude,
your
I worked in deep
elbows?
sink. I know exactly what
Okay,
you're talking about. Yes, I
right,
burned
so
myself many times.
they were boiling water, and the
It
ship
was
listed.
it was the sanitation sink.
Right, and the ship listed, but it had actually been boiling, and I don't think it should have been. I think it should have been below boiling, whatever it was, but I got scalded because the water came up my gloves and then poured
Yeah,
down into the gloves, into my arms and my hands, and I got
yeah,
scalded with boiling
it
water.
fucking
Yeah,
sucks.
yeah, so I
It's like
was
200.
yeah.
It's like 180 degrees,
Right, right. But I think mine was 220 anyway. Like I didn't need
something
skin
like that.
grafts or anything, but I was burned. So I had like 3 days off where I just like laid in my rack, and then I went back to work, and I had remember that white thermal that they used to have, the white thermal shirts? I had to
Yeah,
wear those under my uniform so that I didn't get like infection or whatever it was. But after
I
that, I
never
was
got it that
just
bad, but I burned my hand many a times on
right, right,
those
right.
fucking
Yeah.
gloves.
Well, the gloves went all the way up to my fore up to my shoulders, basically. And then for the water to get that deep and go into my gloves, that was bad. So,
Yeah, real bad.
but yeah, so that Scarface guy, he came after me with a meat cleaver. Um, and I don't know exactly how I got out of it. It wasn't like a James Bond fight where I like picked up pans and he was hacking at me. It was like he just went nuts and tried to like chop me up, and I just left. I don't know exactly what happened, but it was part of
It was
that
seen by
whole
other people. I know.
right, yeah. No, I'm not sure any officers saw it. I think it was still within that whole like that little clique. And
I think it might have been Ray that said like, "Dude, you got to get him out of here."
yeah, I
Like,
forget,
I
but
kind of remember him talking about it, and I
yeah,
know he
but
was at
well,
live, so that
here's
makes
the
sense.
thing. They wanted to know if I wanted to file like a report or a complaint, and I'm like, no. And then apparently they pulled him into like some room or something, and they were like, this guy's not filing a complaint on you. And he was like, what? And they're like, yeah, I guess this guy thought his career was over, but they were
Oh
like,
yeah,
this guy,
he
yeah,
completely thought he was fucking done because
yeah,
he
and
knew
they're
he
like,
fucking lost it,
yeah, and
or
they're
at
like,
least he
this
was going to
guy,
get busted a third.
right, and like this guy's not, this guy doesn't care. He's just not, he's not snitching. So I guess all of a sudden, like I'm out there painting for like 2 days, and then I got sent down to the regular mess decks. So I got sent into the veg prep with that crazy guy, that really nutty guy.
Lob
Uh,
Singer was a good guy though.
I called him
Just
Slop Slinger. That's what I called him, and
I
I
don't
would
want
sing.
to be no
Yeah,
lob
yeah.
singer.
I would sing songs about the guy.
Yeah, we had so many songs. We had a
Yeah,
you remember he had his wife got pregnant and we started singing like I don't want no more
yeah. That was
all I need
good.
now in life is another lob singer, just like I need a hole in my. We did that one, and then we did the, I don't want to be,
Yeah.
lob singer.
Yeah. I had a lot of songs for that guy. I was always singing songs about that guy. It was hysterical. Yeah,
He
I
was super
remember going
nervous. He
down.
was like this. He would
Yeah,
chop lettuce like a fucking maniac.
yeah. He was always nervous. That guy was. Oh, he was high strung. But um, I remember being there. Where did I go after that? I think.
That's
Where
what I
the?
really meant. Like I remember, like we had to move like 100-pound bags of potatoes out of
Hmm.
storage, and like at the time I was like, I never lifted a weight in my life, and they're like
Yeah.
$100, 100 pounds. Like you were just picking up like a bag, and it's like.
Yeah.
Owens, what the fuck's wrong with you? It's like, dude, this thing's heavy. This thing's like weighs as much as I do, and I'm like
Yeah.
struggling, and you're just like
And
walking by me, like,
that was
and then finally,
ladders.
you would like help me, like,
Yeah.
you would drop off your bag, come back to where I was halfway down the stairs, and help me
Yeah.
carry it.
Well, that's all I ever did was just hauling stuff up and down ladders. I just throw the potatoes over my shoulder and go up. Like I remember the lob singer was asking me if I could do 2 bags. I'm like, I'm not going to haul 200 pounds worth of potatoes on my shoulders and up a ladder. I mean, it was
No shit.
yeah,
Like, what am I?
yeah,
Is this a strongman competition?
hmm yeah.
Am I getting paid for it? Fuck you.
I think I was about 240 at that point. I was a big boy, but yeah, that was just like abuse. It was like get as much labor as they could out of me, I guess. But I forget where I went after vegetables. I don't know. I don't know. I'm drawing a blank. I guess we must have pulled in. We
We
pulled
pulled
back
in.
into
Both
port.
both of us. Both of us went to Fox Division pretty quickly after.
Mhm.
That's where we
Mhm.
really became friends. It was me, you. Oh, this one Rogers was in charge.
Right. And he, yeah, he
High and Tight was there. I remember
high
that.
and tight. Yeah, high and tight. Which
RM3 Charles. I'm not gonna say his last name. Little blonde kid. You know who I'm talking about.
I think so. But
Chuck.
I remember. Okay, so I remember going to the Fox division, and that was when I started to realize that I really was just a body. Like because they couldn't make you do mess duty for what was it, more than 3 months, I think,
At the
right?
time, yeah.
At a time. So I got done with that 3 months, and then the next group of radio men were going. I remember that, and I wasn't, and I thought I was going to be working on the radios. Like I was an
I think
idiot
you
to
did
think
for
that.
like a month, and then they
No, no,
sent
no,
you to
no,
Fox.
no, not at that time. I got sent back to that CR division for like a
Oh,
week,
okay.
and then I got sent to Fox division.
Oh,
And I
and then
remember when they
and then
sent me.
and then we found out how
Yeah,
cool it fucking was. Like Fox Division
yeah.
was the best goddamn time.
Well,
It's
no,
so easy.
I remember when they sent me. They're like, "Look, it's nothing personal, but we just want to send you there because the first class knows you. He likes you. He has no problem with you. He'll take
Right.
you."
Owen Rogers, good
Yeah,
fucking dude, man.
yeah. He liked me,
He
and he
got
knew.
he got fucked way too much by that command.
Yeah.
Way too
Well,
much.
he knew I worked. He knew that
Yeah.
even if I ran my mouth a lot, I still worked, and he liked that. So
Well, he thought you were funny too. So
yeah. Well, I was always telling jokes, but and that's another thing that is something that people might not understand. Like when I first explain it, if you're not from the South, which I am not clearly, and if you're not
hey y'all.
familiar, yeah, if you're not familiar with Southern African Americans,
Which I
um,
am.
yeah, it's not busting balls like you do up
No,
north.
it's a whole the
Yeah,
dozens is a whole different fucking game, man. It's
it's
like
jokes. It's
I
jokes,
get it.
and
I get it.
yeah,
And like I would get people from other parts of the country that would get so
right,
fucking upset. Like our friend Joe. Remember he
right,
told a
yeah,
mama joke around him. It wasn't working, right?
yeah. I learned very quickly what that was and how to participate. And I knew it was basically like a roast. Like you could say anything you wanted about that person as long as you were doing jokes, what they called the dozens, right? You could really just bust balls, didn't matter rank. Any African American who understood this, and it was like 95% of them really understood. Um,
Yeah.
and I was ingratiated into that group, much like with the Filipino group, who I was quote unquote cool with, especially when I wasn't snitching when some guy tried to kill me.
All they
Yeah,
cared was the joke good. It didn't matter like how personal it was.
right,
It was like,
right,
did you get a pop out of the crowd?
right.
If you got a pop out of the crowd, you could be pretty fucking mean,
I was
especially in the
very
booth.
mean. I was
Yeah.
very mean, and
People,
It
well,
was
people expect it out of you. Like for me, it was
yeah,
always like I would just come out of nowhere with some mom joke, and people would just look at me like, "What the fuck,
yeah.
Owens?"
No, but I
I was
never
I
did
wasn't as verbal back then as I am now.
I never did your mom. I just did like really mean insults, which I was awesome at. So it was Roth's got jokes. It was always Roth's got jokes. When I would come be like, Roth, you got jokes? Come on, Roth. I'd be like, oh no, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And they're like, whose feelings are gonna get hurt? Whose feelings are gonna hurt? I'm like, okay.
Somebody get her
Yeah.
feelings.
And I would just tee off on everybody. So like that was a thing. I was universally loved by African Americans and Filipinos for different reasons, but because I very quickly learned what their culture was about, I think, and like how to exist within that culture and see things through their eyes and get along with them. I think that was
Well, you
like
you learn
just
you learn
the
how to code. Same thing as me. You learn how to code switch.
I guess. I mean, I never put on phony accents when I talk to
You
them,
did,
but
yeah, you
so
didn't, but yeah, I
no.
mean, you
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
There's code switching and like
Yeah.
mentally and verbally, I guess. Two
Yeah.
different versions. Yeah.
So I wouldn't go up to some like random uh lieutenant junior grade and start telling him your mom jokes. Like I knew that wasn't appropriate no matter what color he was.
Unless you really knew the officer. Yeah.
Yeah, unless I knew him. Yeah, unless I knew him and unless he knew I got jokes. But
Like like
um
like like a Schuster, I could have gone up and done that, and he would have fucking laughed.
right, right. But this is the point where um I forget exactly how it happened. Maybe it was at this time. No, I was in the Fox division and this was the time when I got caught quote unquote sleeping on watch, which I was not sleeping. Um and it was by the executive officer of the ship.
Stiff.
So, yeah, well, whatever his name was, I don't care. Um, but he was the executive officer, and I was on the Fox division, and I was given a break because Fox division was basically you sit there while people do work, and you have a big giant
Welding, hot work.
welding. Yeah,
You're there to make sure the place doesn't catch fire.
yeah, and they were all Japanese workers, Japanese nationals who worked on the base. It would be like,
We would
yeah,
occasionally work for the ship HTs or the freight
right, yeah,
cable HTs as well.
yeah, but it was mostly Japanese
HT
workers.
is a ship welder.
Right. And I was studying Japanese. I was trying to learn Japanese. I was taking Japanese classes on the base, and the Japanese workers would try to talk to me, and I would understand a little bit what they were saying. Um, and I was just there to, but you had these goggles on, and you had the full like fire suit on, and you had the big giant canister, and you were just there to put out the fire if anything started burning.
Not the full set. You had flash gear on, just
Yeah,
the hood and
flash gear.
gloves. Yeah.
So people would fall asleep because they had those black goggles on because you're not supposed to look directly at welding, but these guys that were supposed to put the fires out were falling asleep. So I think that was like a whole thing that was going on, like to catch people falling asleep on. Um, but
That was the
I
biggest problem with Fox Division was staying awake.
right,
Really.
right. I had a book. It was the it was the autobiography of the guy from Home Improvement, that stand-up comic. Um,
And Too Close to a Naked Man by Tim Allen.
yeah, Tim Allen. Yeah, I had that book. I think I gave it to you after that, but I
Yeah, I
had
read
that
it.
book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. That's why I
yeah,
remember it.
I had that
It
book.
had the story about like never mind. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I had that book and I had it in my back pocket and I got a break. And I realized that if I got all my flash gear off and my goggles and I walked through the whole ship and I went off the brow and I went and got like something to drink and I came back, I would be late coming back for this break. So I just decided to just sit there. So I took off my goggles, I took off my gloves, I sat down up against the bulkhead on the deck with the fire canister like a foot away from my foot, and I started reading the book. And the executive officer of the ship comes walking into the compartment and started accusing me of sleeping on watch, asking me why I'm sleeping on watch. And I have a book in my hand reading a book. I'm wide awake. And I said, sir, I'm not asleep. I'm reading this book. And then I realized that I had spoken to him while I was still sitting with my back against the bulkhead. And I immediately stood up at attention. And he seemed annoyed and like he was looking for a way to bust me. So um, he was chewing me out about how I was in dereliction of duty and I could get like 2 weeks on bread and water and this and that. And finally, um, the SRF worker came in and he was like trying to speak to me in Japanese. He didn't speak any English. and I was trying to explain to him like what had happened, that he had given me a break because he was basically in charge of me. So then he went and got like the director of SRF, who was obviously bilingual. He was a Japanese man, and this guy comes in, speaks again, and he started speaking to the commander, and he like went to bat for me and told me like uh what did they call us, personnel, that he was not sleeping.
Fox
Yeah,
Division personnel. Yeah.
yeah, he was given a break, and instead of leaving his post, he decided to read this book, and he was standing by to resume his watch, and it was okay, and this and that, because this guy was really looking to bust. He had no idea who I was. The executive officer of the ship literally had no idea who I was, and he was just looking to bust me. I don't. I guess I offended him because I answered him and I was still sitting down. I don't know what it was, but that was one of. I know it sounds ridiculous, but in my entire time in the Navy, that was one of my biggest like scares. Like a false alarm, like a scare, because this is the executive officer of the ship.
Yeah, and he wasn't a nice
Yeah,
guy. He's a fucking asshole.
yeah. This guy was like the vice president of the country. Imagine if like Mike Pence went and told you something. Like this is a big deal. So that was a scare. That was like a legit scare that I was actually worried about for a couple days. And it was like hanging over my head that he was gonna like bust me because he kept telling me I was sleeping on watch. I was like, and like in that situation, you can't argue with the guy. Like I said, with all due respect, sir, I was not sleeping. I was reading this book. I'm not trying to defend myself. That's the truth. And blah blah blah. And I guess he just like didn't know enough to care who I was. Maybe he wanted to go and bust me anyway. Didn't care what the
He
Japanese
might have just had
director
a
said.
bad mood. Well, it might have been a bad mood, and he walked in the room or just looked over and saw
Yeah,
what he thought he saw, which is
yeah,
probably what 99% of the time happens.
right.
So he just went right into his
Yeah,
spiel, and then all of a sudden he's being challenged on. He's like, "Oh wait, I'm wrong,"
yeah,
and then it's
yeah,
just going to piss him off further. It's like, "Don't tell me I'm fucking wrong." I
yeah.
get it.
But
I get it.
those
But
Japanese,
but but, but
those
for
Japanese
anyone,
classes,
it worked for you. Yeah. Remember the
yeah.
guy in the work that did all the welding in the engine room? That was like a complete pervert. You could like pay him off. You could like he gave him like porn and all that stuff. Like he was a really
Oh
old
God,
like,
yeah,
pervert. Yeah,
yeah.
that's where we first really became friends. That's when we first started really hanging out. And like obviously we had different
Fox,
lifestyles.
yeah,
Yeah, like I was
right.
out pretty much every night on the haunch or weekends in Rapungi, and you were like,
Yeah,
"Yeah, I'll hang out with you
at the
for a
gym.
couple. I'll hang out with you for a couple
Yeah,
hours, and then I'm gonna go back and play my Game Boy."
and yeah, I loved my Game Boy. I love lifting weights. That was like my thing.
I like
So
I
yeah,
like
that's
I like pussy and beer, so I was like that was my two main. I was like, okay, go do that.
yeah, I was all about Game Boy and driving people nuts. So that was like that. I really, I think like 50% of my whole reputation was manufactured, but the other 50% was me just not being able to help myself from pushing people's buttons. I really think I really pushed people's buttons that I couldn't hold back. Like I would see an opportunity to say something like funny, and I just couldn't not say it, and
Yeah,
that would get me in trouble.
and we became the worst fucking pair because I would just feed you because like you were the better talker at the time, so I would just like
Yeah,
this will be fun. Like I would think
yeah,
of something, and I know it'd be funnier out of your mouth, so I would just whisper it to you, and then you just fucking yell it out because you just would do that thing.
yeah.
So we were a terrible, terrible fucking tag team, I think, in that
Who was
respect.
who was the
Remember,
guy that
like
I was
right,
trying to?
right near the end of it, like you, because I'm the one who gave you the joke, and you got in fucking trouble for it for the people who got in trouble for the meth. You remember that?
What was that one? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. People that got in trouble for like. Yeah, I see. I never understood that. Here was the deal.
Well, we
People were
did the
getting
thing of
thrown
like,
out.
yeah. Well, to give I haven't told the story yet, but I'll tell you. It was the fat R. He was one of your guys. He was an RM. He was a fat
Yeah, let's not
dude,
use
and
any
like,
names.
yeah,
No names. No names. But
yeah, and
there
he
was a group of guys and some
the
girls, right? Some.
between combat systems and com that were like doing meth, and one guy. I think it was an R. I'm pretty sure it was an RM. He came in across the gate. He'd gotten paranoid because he was high, and put the
Right.
baggie he still had in his mouth.
Right.
And he actually bit down on it and swallowed the whole fucking thing. And he thought he was going to OD, so he went to medical. And since he was
Right.
super high, he started naming every fucking name he could think of when people asked him, like,
And
"So who did
yeah,
you do
we
it
all got
drugs
we all
with?"
got tested for that
You all
too.
got, yeah, both those apartments. I came on board the next morning. It was like Saturday morning. I had duty, and there was a
Yeah.
line. And
Yeah.
then the results came back, and a bunch of people got busted. And there was one girl who got busted, and like,
There were 7 of them, I think. It was 7 or
yeah,
8
yeah,
that
but there
all.
was one in
Yeah.
particular who, I went up to you and said like, hey, you should go up to her and like, start rubbing your nose and say, hey, so and so, how you doing? Blah blah blah. But be
Yeah.
very make the joke, and she got fucking very upset about it, of course, even though she's about to get kicked out of the Navy, and you got in trouble for it, correct? And that was my
Right,
fault.
right. I got busted for that.
That was way like we're way skipping ahead. That's like 99, I think.
Yeah, but I remember making my case. Like somebody wrote some paperwork that I was like harassing someone,
It was
and
for
I
her.
remember.
Because you
Right,
were harassing her for getting busted for drugs
right,
with
and I
like
remember
the most
saying,
innocuous of fucking jokes.
yeah, and I remember saying to the command master chief, because they do like an investigation right off the bat. It stays with the enlisted level, the command master chief, and the
Yeah.
command master chief was there, and I said, look, uh, this is somebody getting thrown out of the military because they can't follow the rules and want to do illegal drugs and they can't take a ribbing. Well, I think that the problem is already solving itself. Are you really going to put a mark on my record when I'm a good sailor and I don't do those things? And he looked right at me and he was like, yeah, I don't know what the point of this is. Get out of here. So, like, because I was always good at explaining myself and my situation. I was like, yeah, I'm going to rib somebody about getting thrown out of the Navy for, being a criminal. Are you really going to bust me for that? Like, so that
Yeah, I
was,
mean,
yeah.
you did it in Japan too, like where you could, SOFA would
Yeah.
not say number one, you got busted by a Japanese cop. SOFA's not saving you. Like Navy is gonna
No,
fucking throw you right under the bus and say you go to Japanese jail and we don't give a fuck. That's your problem.
they were lucky they didn't
So
get busted by Japanese police.
exactly, you're
Yeah.
lucky you got picked up by a fucking U.S. drug test.
Right. It's
So
basically like
anyway,
your it's like the difference between your principal catching you doing something and your mom and dad finding out you did it and just punishing you with 2 weeks grounding or
right,
something. Yeah.
yeah, it's like you got way lucky just to get kicked out of the Navy. Trust me.
Right. Yeah.
So yes, so that's going to cover it for part one. We got a lot of stuff to. I think we got up to speed here, where we're going to be on the next Tales from the Fleet into fall and winter of 1997. I think we got some good background here from Mr. Roth. So we'll see you next time on part two, and that's it. Peace.